1.8, primary productivity. The major goal for this section is to explain how solar energy is acquired and transferred by living organisms. And before we talk about acquiring and transferring energy, let's also take a moment and talk about the sun. The sun, as we know from years of science class, the sun is the major source of energy on this planet. Where does that energy come from? At the most basic terms that we need to know is that the sun has gases, at this moment mostly hydrogen, and under extreme heat and pressure, those hydrogen atoms are being fused together, and that fusion results in helium and energy that's going to be released. That energy makes its way to this planet. It takes about 8.5 minutes from the sun to our planet, and we have the ability to capture that energy and do something with it. Plants have the ability to capture solar energy. Then there's photosynthesis, as we know. They take in sunlight, they're going to take in water, they're going to breathe in carbon dioxide, and they'll produce organic molecules such as glucose and produce a byproduct oxygen, which is great for us because we need it to undergo cellular respiration. Now, the rate at which the solar energy is being converted into organic compounds such as glucose through the process of photosynthesis over a period of time, we call primary productivity. So if we were to go to a location and just add up all the photosynthesis that's occurring and looking at all the organic compounds that are being made, that would be considered primary productivity. And productivity is typically measured in kilocalories per meter squared per year. When we look at a given area, as we said, primary productivity is going to be the total rate of photosynthesis in a given area. So here, looking at this picture of the United States, we could see that the primary productivity, and it's being measured a little different down here, but we can see that it varies based off of the part of the country that we're in. And it's going to make sense. Up here, we have our temperate deciduous forests. Out in this area, we're going to have our deserts. We have more forest lands along the California coast. We're going to have our prairies. So the types of producers that are in a given area and the quantity of those producers ultimately determine the total rate of photosynthesis. Now, through deforestation, we would expect to see the primary productivity decrease over time if we are no longer having those producers in that location to undergo photosynthesis. Net primary productivity is simply adding up all the photosynthesis that's occurring in the organic molecules that are being made, but then subtracting cellular respiration. So, as we know, living organisms all undergo cellular respiration, and that is true of all producers. The tree that's outside, that's about to lose its leaf, or deciduous trees, during the spring, summer, and early fall, it is spending tons of time capturing solar energy and converting it into organic compounds and storing as much as it can. Because as we've discussed earlier in the year, that as the ground freezes, the leaves are going to fall off the tree to help conserve water. And the tree is going to rely solely on cellular respiration during those months where it has no leaves because it's not undergoing photosynthesis. So if we were to take the tree that's right outside the school and spend the year and calculate how much organic molecules it creates through photosynthesis during the course of the year, and then we subtract all the cellular respiration that happens on a daily basis for the year, we get what is known as net primary productivity. So what is actually going to be available for the next trophic level? More specifically, our primary consumers that are herbivores, or even our omnivores if they're consuming the plant material. As we looked at the map of the United States, we saw in the United States, productivity varied based off location. And it varies because, as we mentioned, the types of producers that are in those locations. This bar chart here shows that based off of the biome, some biomes are much more productive than others. Areas where we tend to have warmer temperatures and lots of water and lots of sun, we're going to have very high productivity. So if we take a look at, for example, our tropical rainforests, as we said, if we take your finger, trace it around the equator on the globe, that's where most of your tropical rainforests are going to fall. They're getting roughly 12 hours of sunlight day in and day out, and they have a steady temperature that's nice and warm, which is going to allow for high rates of photosynthesis. High rates of photosynthesis, even subtracting cellular respiration, you still have high productivity that's going to occur. When we get all the way down to the deserts, we see that the deserts aren't as productive. We have the high temperatures. We're probably going to have large amounts of sun, but what we're missing is the water. So one of the major limiting factors in deserts, as you recall, is going to be water. So they're not nearly as productive as any of the other biomes that are above it. Our estuary swamps and marshes, as you can see, have some of the highest productivity, along with tropical rainforests and coral reefs. And as we make our way down the bar chart, we see that productivity is going to decrease. And if you look at it, it's going to tie directly in with temperature, the amount of water, and how much solar energy is in that area. It is very possible that after some type of drastic change, so let's say we're in the tropical rainforest, good to say drastic change should be deforestation. As we cut down large amounts of trees, we're not going to be as productive because those trees are no longer there to undergo photosynthesis. Hurricanes, fires, tornadoes, earthquakes, any type of drastic change that could cause the removal or death of large amounts of producers will indeed have a drastic effect on what the net primary productivity of that biome is. Now, as we learned earlier, oceans and waterways are their own biome as well. We have aquatic versus our aquatic biomes fall under freshwater and saltwater categories. In our oceans, sunlight only can penetrate so deep. So you're going to have an area that's known as the photic zone. If we take a look at here, the photic zone extends about 200 meters down. So we're going to have large amounts of sunlight that make its way through there. So photic meaning light. This is where a lot of our photosynthetic organisms, such as phytoplankton in the oceans, live, and they're going to be able to capture the solar energy and undergo photosynthesis. As we go deeper, we could see around 1,000 meters, we hit our aphotic zone where no sunlight is possible. With no sunlight possible, the organisms that live that deep can no longer undergo photosynthesis because there's a lack of light. Instead, we see organisms will undergo chemosynthesis. So they're going to use chemicals and synthesize them to make the energy they need. And as we see in this diagram here, we're still breathing in carbon dioxide, we're still breathing in water, but we're also going to take in hydrogen sulfides. So instead of the energy from the sun, we're going to take hydrogen sulfides, and that's going to allow us to make our organic molecules, our sugars, and then it's also going to make a byproduct of sulfur compounds. But if we go back to the photic and the midwater zone, when sunlight actually strikes the surface of the ocean, we can see that as we decrease or increase depth, or the deeper we go down into the ocean, the amount of light that penetrates deep is going to change. So as the central knowledge statement states, that most of the red light is going to be absorbed in the upper meter of water. Blue light is only going to penetrate about 100 meters deep. And this is going to have a great effect on photosynthesis. And we will do a lab activity sometime in the spring that will look at the different colors of light and the rates of photosynthesis. So the deeper we go down means the organisms are going to need to be adapted to address that lack of visible light. And as we just mentioned, chemosynthesis would be a good option.